Good morning. Welcome to the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission meeting on the 11th of March, 10 a.m. I'll call this meeting to order. And Brett, could you roll call for us, please?
Commissioner Brown, Carter,
Present.
Little,
Present.
Smith,
Present.
Underwood, Jacobs, present, Velasquez,
Present.
Chairman Vieira.
And present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Brett. And we have Pastor David Jackson for the invocation from Grace Chapel.
Let's pray. Jesus, you're amazingly good. And God, I just thank you for this men and women that you gathered together today to decide how best to use our time and our resources to protect the city. God, thank you for each and every one here. God, I pray you'd give everybody wisdom on how best to use the resources you've given us to protect the city, God, and I pray that it would honor you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Flag salute, would you place your hand over the heart? Repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Before we get started, I would just like to take just a quick moment to welcome and introduce the Government and Law Academy from Highland High School. If you students could please just stand up and be recognized, and we appreciate you being here, and thank you. And I know Mr. Garrett Root, teacher, and Debbie Penny, counselor, thank you for being here today as well. So enjoy. Public business from the floor, agendized items. Citizens who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any agendized item may do so when the item is being considered by the Commission. You need to complete a speaker card, identify the item you'd like to discuss, and you're limited to 3 minutes. Consent calendar. If I could get a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion, clarifications, comments? Hearing none, call for the question. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Continued business item number 1. We have a discussion today regarding Ordinance 1001, administrative penalties for state offenses. And I had the opportunity to briefly speak with Bishop Hearns just prior to this meeting, but Bishop Hearns, I saw you, there you are, right behind there. Nice to see you again, and understand you'd like to speak to this morning.
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Commission, and to all of the officials here for our city. It's just good to be here. Off the subject a little bit, when I was sitting as mayor and council member, people could get up to where you are, and I can't get any further than right there, so I don't understand that, but it's okay. No, just needed to throw that in, that's all. No, thank you so much for hearing us this morning, and really all I wanted to do is to ask you all to consider another option to what you have for the people who violate as it relates to Proposition 47. And that's about all I want to say about it. The people who are going to speak to this sitting with me, and have Mr. Morrell, who is the chairman for our working committee, and Mr. Farrell, who's a member of the committee. And if we could take just a few minutes to tell you what we would like to see and how to handle that, we'd appreciate it. And we did get a chance to kind of talk this over with the mayor. I don't know if that means anything or not, if that's a plus or minus. I don't know if I need to take that back, I'll take it back, but if not, it's good. So I'm thankful for that, and Mr. Morrell would like to say good morning and thank you, and then Farrell Mitchell will give you the story.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can we waive the time limit?
Oh. Yes. Any concern on the part of any of our commissioners with regards to waiving the 3-minute time limit? No, that's fine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. First off, it's a privilege really to come before all of you, most of you who I do know, and I couldn't be any closer with anybody than I am with David, and of course our city manager. I have some specific concerns over the ordinance itself. one of the things that came up in our meetings, the working group, was these penalties that were agreed upon by the city council and unanimously agreed upon. I have a question about simply for this. At one of our meetings, prior to the second meeting that the city council had, the issue of the penalties, the $500, $1,000, depending on what the penalty was and what felony was reduced to a misdemeanor. One of the questions that came up was, Emmett, you shouldn't be, and that's me, shouldn't be so concerned about how these penalties are going to be adjudicated, because most of the people who've committed consistently over and over these same misdemeanors are probably not in a position to be able to pay the penalties to begin with. I think there's a lot of validity to that. But what bothered me the most was the next time this issue came up, and because it was said just as it was, and Lee, of course, was there also, and Mr. DeRico, there wasn't going to be handcuffing and making people pay these penalties, and I thought that was a great compromise on the part of members of our committee when they made that statement. My question is, the next day, the paper told the story that not only was it agreed that there would be a financial penalty, they talked of the penalty, and this is inconceivable to me, and I don't even think it's legal for the city council to threaten to take someone's income tax. Do you know the most common statement in most poor people, most people's vocabulary in dealing with family issues is, when my taxes get here? I'm gonna get the children's when the taxes get. I'm gonna put the down payment on the car when I get my income tax. This is poor people's lottery. This is the lottery that comes through the federal government that each and every one of us, and I'm no different, look to for some type of financial redress. The income tax that is given to individuals who worked hard is something we shouldn't play with, threaten to take away, or use as part of a penalty. Totally inconceivable that we would have done that. Equally as hard for me to comprehend is...
Emmett, let's take this one thing at a time. So
Okay.
I understand it because we waived the time limit, so we can have a
I'll
true
cut it
discussion.
short. As short as
No,
I
you don't
can.
have to cut it short. I just want to address what you're saying. You're saying it's
Go ahead.
inconceivable that the city would take or threaten to take an individual's income tax.
Yes.
Aren't we saying that it's inconceivable that these people take other property from other individuals unlawfully?
Well, I mean, how are we really, is this going to be a due process issue?
No.
Then it is a due process issue.
No, not on this side of it. On the working group, we had discussed this before, and to lower the ability or to give more tools to the sheriff department, and not to give them it's a little hammer, a medium hammer, and a big hammer. The big hammer is the felony. We've worked together not to create a situation which these individuals have and they would go directly to a felony. Medium hammer is a misdemeanor. That's also there. Little hammer, it's a fine. We're keeping it off their record. So if you have an individual that constantly takes from other individuals in an unlawful manner, then I'm not concerned about his income tax because he's not concerned. That's the most important part that the individuals out there are talking to me about. They're taking my property that I've paid for in an unlawful manner. So what we're trying to do is little hammer, medium hammer, and big hammer. And I think that we've done this effectively, that we're not sending them or putting on their records. We're spending a lot of time getting individuals' felonies reduced. We're spending a lot of time and a lot of effort, and you and your group are doing that. Sure. However, we need to show them, and we need to support the people that support the city and do it lawfully. So I cannot take into consideration an individual that is concerned about his income taxes, that is taking TV sets away from an individual, or they're doing some unlawful act. I'm not concerned about their income tax, because they should be concerned about the lawful acts. All we're asking these individuals in the city, whoever they are, is to abide by the law. Okay? If they abide by the law, they can keep their income tax. That's an important point.
I don't disagree with you, Chris. I have no problem. I was fortunate. I had an opportunity to be out of town and read papers from San Francisco, Santa Barbara, and all over the county, and the municipalities that represent the majority of those places in Southern California. Most of them were consistently agreeing with your premise. My position is a little different in that, is there anyone in here that isn't concerned about the income tax? And should I just make an assumption that because you are, that you are in fact, I think many law-abiding and very concerned individuals, I am under the impression that Proposition 47 was a direct result of the people's choice. The people are the ones that made the decision to vote, and they unanimously, in larger numbers than we've seen in our area, they agreed that this was something that needed to be done. Of course, who wants to see trivial, and there's no such thing as a trivial crime. There's no such thing as a minimal misdemeanor crime. The issue is we were trying to keep, and we've all agreed, we wanted fewer people to end up in the penitentiary dealing with prison concern. Your concern is very real. Now, I haven't met the person yet, but I hope through our working in the working group, I will meet an individual who may have taken something that wasn't his, and we're in complete agreement. In fact, I think one of the things Mr. Mitchell was going to talk about was the alternatives. But and Bishop, not to cut you off, but I think you need to understand, I really had a difficult time accepting, and I don't think the county or the city has the right to threaten someone's IRS worked for money, and that was why I had a problem accepting the city saying, yeah, we'll take your income tax. There was more to it than that. On that same article, they were talking about putting lien on property, and someone said to me, well, these people committing these crimes, they don't own no property. What do they care? Of course they do. Some people had property given to them. Some people worked for it. Some people actually bought their homes. But you can't threaten to put a lien on them because they're misdemeanor because they stole, I hate to say a TV, because a TV may have cost more than what we could justify as a misdemeanor. I'll back off. I'll let you go on and say what you want to say.
Let me tell you the history that I've gone into. I went into the different Walmarts, not one, not two, but all of the different Walmarts, and talked to the managers and asked them, how has Proposition 47 affected you? People are actually walking in, loading carts up, knowing how much value are in the carts, and walking out. In one case, they had an individual that put 3 32-inch TVs in the cart and walked out. They don't care of anybody. And this is, and I said, is it on a racial lines? Is it who does it affect? And he said, everybody's doing it now. So this isn't aimed at anybody. This is aimed at individuals and trying to get them to follow the law. Okay? So if they follow the law and they become good citizens, what action should we take, or what modification would you like to see the city take?
I'll use that as an opportunity for Mr. Mitchell to talk about what we have discussed in those areas. And it's not like I'm arbitrarily saying there should be no penalties. There's a penalty for everything done unjust and wrong. We understand that.
Right.
May I interject for once? I would just like to say, along with Mr. Chris' comment, we have to keep in mind, I think it may be of assistance, it's a form of deterrence. So as he is saying, we're trying to deter individuals from committing these crimes. Because as Mr. Chris is saying, if there is no deterrence, then they are basically comfortable with committing any sort of crime. and not thinking of the impact it will have on other individuals and the community and the city.
Probably you're more right than wrong, but I don't think that that's a justification for saying we can do anything we want because we want to make sure there is a viable deterrent. Do you think that was what was in the mind
I
of
don't think
people?
that there's, it's very difficult. We don't want to misunderstand what the city is trying to do as a whole. It's not that they are saying we can do whatever we want. I think what everyone is trying to do is come together collaboratively and come to a resolution as to how to deter crimes. Because just the act of stealing a television set could lead to other crimes in the process. And so the ultimate purpose and point is to protect the citizens of this country. And so that is why different solutions are coming forth to make some sort of strong deterrence so that potential criminals, any sort of person, will be deterred from committing such acts.
I think potential criminals need to be addressed for what they are. I don't think they need to go to prison, and I think the general population agreed on that, and they voted their position. Of course, 47 has had some quirks, and it has turned out to be more of a handicap than an asset, without a doubt. But I just think, okay, I'll let Mr. Mitchell talk about some things we've talked about as potential deterrents to go along with what you're saying. But again, I still don't agree that the penalties that the city council agreed on, and I'm talking about taking someone's income tax or putting a lien on their property, is justified, and I don't think the courts will ever accept that.
Okay, I'd like to take just a moment. If there's any comments or statements from commissioners, you can feel free.
I do have one.
Okay.
With respect to the lien, if you find the $500 and the $500 isn't paid, and is this a point that maybe you're about to address? What tool then do you use to collect that fine to enforce the deterrent?
Basically,
Just one second. I think if you're going to answer those things, why don't we go ahead and just hold off? You know, that's a question. If there's any other comments or statements, then go into the alternatives or the options that we spoke of, if we could do that as well. That way we're not interrupting one another.
Just one little comment too is that what I understand too, and what the city council and vice mayor and Mr. DeRico, am I correct in thinking there's been a lot of talk with box tenants as far as them pursuing and not getting disgruntled on crimes that are being taken place, and nothing's being done about it. And I know that you've worked and told us many, many times that one of the issues are, hey, step up to the plate. You know, we have to keep pushing forward constantly to let this stuff stop. And understanding where you're coming from, I think it's something that what Vice Mayor Christ is saying, and what I believe, Mr. DeRico, these are things that are having meetings constantly in regards to somebody's got to come up and make sure that somebody's doing something, and this is a start.
Can I address this, please? And first of all, thank everyone for their time. I'm excited about our partnership with the City of Lancaster, Lee DeRico, our thank you, but excuse me. Basically, what's going on is we're having the same situation when it comes to doctors dealing with cancer. And what they do is they work on the symptoms and they attack the symptoms. But if you don't attack the cause, the reason why it's happening, the symptoms are going to keep rearing this ugly face. And the symptoms, the cause of what's going on is what we're working on in the working group, a diversionary program that will get the people jobs. We have a suit closet. We want mentoring programs and programs that will deter them and help them. Now, if somebody have a job, they're not going to be breaking in somebody's house. They can buy their own TVs. So the diversionary program that we're asking you guys to consider is a program that we are putting in place for mentorship, helping them get jobs, training them for job preparations, job interviewing skills, resume writings, and things like that, so we can work on the cause and not the symptoms. So in lieu of the $500, we would ask that you guys consider working with the working group and TCAL for this diversionary program. So say if they go through this program, then the $500 can be waived, and then we have something that can really help our community. It helps the citizens, it helps the victims, and it also deters the people from crime, because now we gave them a viable source to where they don't have to steal.
Would it be safe to assume that what you're saying now is a first-time offender could be put through something, a program like you're speaking of? What do you do with the second offender? Is it now justifiable to levy the penalties that have been put in place?
It would be, however, the first line of defense is to stop it, to get them jobs. That's the first line of defense. And that's where we would go, because, once again, like I said, if they have a job, they don't have a reason to steal.
Ms. I do have a question, and perhaps this is for the city attorney, assistant city attorney. Regarding an ordinance, when you are having a violation or a penalty, I thought that there was a tiered approach at a $100 metric and then go to $2 and then $500 on a third. Does that apply here?
No, our standard administrative citation policy is 100, 200, and 500, I believe. But this is a separate penalty structure, so we start at 500, and then for the second and any subsequent, it goes up to 1,000. And the purpose of that is so it has a strong deterrent effect. That's our goal, at least.
Because in real reality, we all love this community, and we don't want crime in our community. You know, we all work hard for the things that we have, and we don't want someone breaking in our house and things like that. But we have to ask the question again, what is the cause?
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, sir.
On your program that you're proposing and what you're asking, how do you pay for that?
We have to work that. We have to work that out. We're going to be looking for grants. We can be looking for the community for support. So we're working on those as we speak. But we wanted to at least bring the program to the commission and let them know, you know, that we do have a tier of program that, you know, that can really help everyone in the community.
Have you brought your program to the city and proposed it?
We spoke to them about it, yes, we have. But we have to follow our chain of command, and our chain of command is this justice. So I'm bringing it before you guys first before we go any further.
I look at our city and expanding as it is and wanting to expand more and being pro growth as far as business, because we do need industry and business up here, and they work tireless hours constantly making that and trying to make that happen. And with that comes along law enforcement, law security, stores that we have to protect, citizens that we have to protect. So I'm just kind of curious on how your program would be funded to compensate that problem that you're proposing.
Well, we're working on the funding. So the first thing first is to get the program designed and go from there.
Okay. Thank you,
and
sir.
Also, in saying that too, one of the other things that we all know that we need to do is we need to bring more businesses up here to our Antelope Valley. And in one of the programs that we have, they will have to go to business writing classes and how to design business proposals and things like that. And we put their mind in the mindset of business. And this elevates the economics here in our Antelope Valley, where we all love.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
How long of a program do you think that would be?
I would say we could give it, 6 weeks? Give them enough time to learn about the dressing for success, working on getting them a job. Those would be the first main things, is getting them employment.
Okay, because how would they still support themselves during that 6 weeks? When someone goes in and takes 3 TVs, that's not for personal use, that's for sale. So, I mean, that's how they're supporting themselves at that time. When they committed the first crime to become part of the program. Now they have to be part of the program for 6 weeks, still without a job. How are they going to support themselves?
But what you need to understand is this is where we all work together collectively. Now, since they got caught, the eyes are already on them, and it's not likely that they're going to commit another crime because we're watching them now. They're in our program. So we have to just make sure that we have a safe barrier for them, because they're not going to, if they know that the eyes of the community and the city is on them, it's not likely they're going to commit a second crime.
I would disagree. I do work in the juvenile justice system, so I do understand the reoffending, and reoffending while you're on probation, reoffending while you're on parole, the continual cycle until incarceration, then they reoffend while they're incarcerated.
Well, see, and then I would have to say I disagree with you, because I'm coming from the other side of the law. I'm coming from one of those people who was one of those people. So I
success
completely
stories,
understand.
and I admire that, and that's what I strive for. That's what we want to happen.
But if we focus our minds on the negative and not put our minds focused on the change, that's what we end up having. Collectively, if we keep focusing on the negative, that's what we're going to get.
That's why
we have to change.
we're kind of positive. How will they support themselves? Will the grants help support them? Will they be part of a halfway house? Will they be part of some kind of a living program where they won't have to go out and take another 3 TVs?
We're open to all suggestions. That's why we're coming to the commission.
Set up to present, or if you're still working on the program.
Well, we're working on it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
May I make just a quick closing statement? Thank you, gentlemen, for making this input. We are working on this. I'd like to give a live report. Now, this happened many years ago. Again, I'm not asking anybody to follow this, because my ways could be stupid, but they work. And that is that I had somebody to break in my house while I was living right across the street from my church. And I got really upset, looking for the law, everything else. Found out who did it. And when we found out who did it, the Lord had worked on my heart to sit down in the jail cell with 3 young men. And long story made short, I sat with them and walked them through them being the owner of my house, and I broke in their house. And they ended up in tears. They ended up now in our community. They're grown now and doing very well in our community. We're working the program, and all I ask you all to do is to give it an opportunity. We did have a long discussion with the mayor. He's put money into that. He's providing, in fact, even some clothing so that these guys and ladies that want to go out and look good when they go up to get a job, that they'll have some way to get that support. So what I'm asking you all to do, if you could find a way to delay this a minute, let us work it out and bring it back to you, I think we can get somewhere. But I do appreciate you all allowing us this long time before you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Unless you don't have any other questions, because I can't answer them. But I do ask you, if you would do that, I certainly would appreciate it if you all would delay it. I think that's what we're asking them to do. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, if you would do that. And I don't know how you work this out with the mayor, but if you talk to him, he'll let you know that we are really working on this very sincerely. Okay. Thank you so much again for allowing us to come before you.
Well, thank you, Bishop. But this item isn't closed. We do have a speaker card from Ms. Shannon McDonald.
Good morning.
And I would,
Commissioners,
I would say, to be fair, let's go ahead and keep the time is open. It's the same concept, so let's go ahead and keep it consistent. So,
good. No, you don't want to do that with me.
Do you want to self-impose 3 minutes?
I don't need that much time. I wasn't going to say anything, but I was compelled to now. I just wanted to bring up something, and it is about the whole the fine. Okay, the issue with the taxes about being. One thing I found out is that when you don't pay your car registration, what happens? They garnish your wages. They take out they will take it from your taxes. If you don't pay child support, they do those same things. Now, these aren't things that people are actually going out and stealing people's property. They're not taking anything from anyone. But they just, something happened to my catalytic converter. I'm not going to pass a smog. My registration is due. They're going to take it out of my taxes. They're going to take it out of wherever they can to get those fees paid. Mentorship is very important in this. I just don't see how we can't. It just doesn't. It seems like we're having this issue because it seems like it's like, in one point, what are the consequences? I don't get it. I don't understand what the consequences are going to be. There has to be some consequence. I've been on both sides of the law as well. Just want to let you know that. So, but I do know that I don't like people stealing things. I don't like people hurting other people, things like that. So I'm here to try to make a difference with that as well. And I feel like the mentorship is extremely important. Jobs are important. And it is true. People are oh yeah, I wanted to bring this up too. I remember years and years and years and years ago, I believe that they had a meth lab right behind the highway patrol at one point. So to say that people aren't going to do things right in front of the police, I've seen people numerous times smoking blunts right in front of them. You know, I mean, there's this thing, they will commit crimes in front of them because if you do it in front of them, they don't think you're crazy enough to do it in front of them. So it's kind of like that catch, you know, right there. But I didn't really have a lot to say about it. I just really wanted to speak on that as far as people assuming that taxes can't be taken or garnished, but you can garnish them you can't garnish people's wages for committing crimes for them to pay their dues that they owe to society. But you can I'm not working right now, but just saying a person that works has having a hard time getting a vehicle fixed, but they get their income garnished. I mean, literally, their paychecks expect to be a certain amount, but they garnish their wages because they didn't pay their car registration. I just wanted to bring that point out because people have to pay for their consequences. But I do believe mentorship is one of the top ones, in my opinion, as far as helping put this stuff in check. Because if you have people like me and you have people like these individuals who do talk, we can get through some of these people. We can, knock them upside the head, not in a literal term, of course, but, kind of get them to act right. Lee Smith is doing the same thing. I mean, with working with probation, with kids. I mean, all those kids are not going to be saved, but we're going to do the best we can to save most of them. Do we can do, because there's going to be some hard-headed kids that he dealt with when he was 15. I mean, my man being in there for 34 years, those kids that he dealt with when he was in his 30s are now grown men. And guess where they're at? Probably the prison system, some of them. So that's all I wanted to say. I didn't mean to, sorry about that, but that was my point. So that's all I need to say.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Two things. One, before we close this agenda item, I want to give an opportunity for the commissioners to make any comments or statements that they'd like to make. But I'd also like to state that, it's been enjoyable having the conversation, hearing both sides. I think there's some valid points out there. What I would opt for this commission to do is maybe we look at forming a subcommittee that looks at the proposal that you are continuing to work on as we look at the ordinance as well. And in taking into consideration, is there something in between that can be looked at as next steps, possibly? So I would ask the commission if they want to make comments, statements, they can do so at this time, or if there's a particular interest on any commissioner's interest in this item, if they'd be interested in chairing such a subcommittee as well.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. I think that things like this should be looked at, and I think there's points on all sides. I do understand the seriousness of what the city's been going through, and working with Mr. Draco, the Sheriff's Department, Highway Patrol, and the city, and understanding what the Sheriff's Department has to go through in individuals as far as keeping everything in line. So I would be in agreement of joining some type of subcommittee and looking at situations like that and bringing it up and seeing if there's anything we can do. I do think there is an issue. I do think that the city is addressing it because it's been addressed to them many times as far as what they should do. And they've taken a hard look at this. So, my concern is looking at your point of view is understanding that how does this get funded? How does it relate? What happens if they break the program? And there's a lot of things that should be looked at before, and I'm interested in Dr. Vieira if that's possible. So,
thank you. Thank you so much.
I do have a comment with respect to the genesis of the ordinance itself. It's my opinion, there's 3 tiers to deterrence of crime. There's the home, there's the community, there's the government. 2 are proactive, 1 is reactive. We're addressing with the ordinance the reactive part of that. The home and the community are where the values are instilled to avoid doing those things. However, when that fails, there has to be teeth somewhere in order to get a reaction. The escalation and penalty is to enforce that escalation so that the message gets across. I understand the concern. However, the way to avoid having any of the escalations take place is to not commit the crime. That's all I have.
I'd just like to add for Bishop Hearns, as part of the program, I would like you to look into the restorative justice part, and that's actually what you went through by meeting those young men that broke into your home, and that if you can make that part of the program as much as possible, that is a very powerful tool.
I'd just like to add something, if you don't mind, Jim Rivera. You know, through the working group, we've worked on a project that we're heavily involved in this process. We've already established some relationships through the district attorney's office and our judiciary. Maybe what's more appropriate at some point through these discussions is bring back exactly where the plan is at this point as it regarding this. And you know, we've changed the name several times, but there's different components to it. There's also been some funding discussions as it relates, and to be more informative to bring exactly where we're at whatever stage we're at. In light of this, now I'm going to go on the other side of this, in light of Prop 47, the issues with the petitions of the court, part of the biggest issue here is creating the incentive for people to participate in this program, because typically what's occurred with some of these issues, especially as it relates to drug-related crimes, there's no incentive for participation in diversion or treatment programs right now. It's not even a consequence of that action. So those are things that we also, the responsibility of the program is to develop the enthusiasm for participation. On the other side of this, too, is that exactly what Commissioner Smith just talked about was the restorative justice mindset of these issues, okay? And again, we talk about this constantly, and this is what you're tasked with as a commission, is always consideration for victims as well. So how do we make victims in the community whole at the same time providing services and deter that behavior from occurring again, right? So there's the balance, and that's the struggle that we have. So, you know, we can be adversary as far as everyone's position on all those things, but we need to have a solution. Part of that is having consequence for your actions. You know, Dave and I we all grew up here. Jeff, we grew up here. Trust me, you know, the community would be just as hard on you as your individual parents were. I mean, there was some deterrence to those issues. Those are things that we talk about through the group that have been good conversations. The problem is, the biggest struggle we've had in the group is understanding funding's a big part of it, right? These things cost money to do programs. We have buy-in already from the high school district. Steve Radford's now going to be a part of our group through the adult education program. We have things for GED. We have all these things that we've considered. So there's been a lot of things brought into this. Prop 47 threw another wrinkle in it to us for it that actually made our job harder, not easier, okay? We had some incentive for participation in programs that can change that behavior a stronger hold before this proposition went through. Okay, and the reality of how the proposition was presented was somewhat deceptive in my mind. That's my personal opinion about that, not the opinion of the city or the council or anything. It was somewhat deceptive. But again, we have it, okay? And as the mayor said at a couple council meetings ago, and the vice mayor has talked about, we're stuck with it for now. Okay, there's things we have to do to try and adapt. So it has made it more difficult through this process. And I think that's the purpose of coming here to the commission now with this, is how do we work this in line with things that we've already put in place and also satisfy the judiciary's issues as it related to this. I guarantee you we're well up into the thousands now probably with petitions for modification based on cases that are already adjudicated or pending cases. I will tell you on the other side, we're already being contacted by attorneys as it relates to this ordinance because they want to be proactive about it, because there's some benefit for participation. So those things are all up in the air. I think the subcommittee, Dr. Vieira, is a great idea. We can share those and then present where we are up to speed. But again, funding's a big issue right now. You know, we're involved in and I was going to talk about the truancy project later, but you know, there's been significant resources put to that and having great results. But all these things do cost time and money for staff involvement as well. Okay? Sorry. Just thought I'd
Thank you very much, Mr. Drico. Thank you, and we're going to go ahead and move on to, unless there's any other comments from commissioners.
Actually, I just wanted to thank you all for your presentation and your concerns. Keep in mind, I think that is the best way to come to a successful solution, is to hear both sides. I did like the whole presentation of the mentorship program, coupled with, of course, the deterrence together. And Mr. Mitchell, as far as you're concerned, your personal experience, which I don't know the details of, but the fact that you had to undergo this similar type of hardship and come up today and make this presentation, you should be extremely proud of yourself. And your personal story is something that is so valuable that you could go around and disclose to many young individuals, and that would be probably one of the more positive influences anyone could bestow upon the young generation. And please never forget that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Continued business number 2, discussion of proposed revisions to the Lancaster Municipal Code, Chapter 8.5.2, chronic nuisance property. Is there any comment statements from any of our commissioners with regards to that at this point? To be honest with you, I haven't been able to do the research that I would like to do as an individual, and if it's okay with the commission, I'd like to keep this on the agenda for the next one to do my homework a little more.
Absolutely.
So if that's okay. All right. That's right. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to continued business number 3, which is an ongoing discussion regarding potential commission work plan. This is a conversation we opened up at our last meeting. We were discussing, as a result of Mr. Dorico actually presenting us a report to us with regards to crime in the city, what do we want to do collectively as a working group, putting together a plan to potentially address crime, quality of life, those types of things. So commissioners, we were all asked to give it some thought and bring forward our thoughts today and see where it goes from there. So I would open that up for comments or ideas, thoughts that you may have as commissioners as we work towards putting together some objectives or a plan and addressing some of the city issues at this point.
The city manager had given us crime stats at our last meeting, and one of the first things that I thought about is we have a lot of different programs that are highlighted throughout the city. I wanted to find out if there is a way that we are able to gauge the success of those different programs, and perhaps create a place we can bring all of that information together and then get that back out into the community, therefore sharing and hopefully changing the perception in a positive light on the Sheriff's Department and things that the city is doing to create positive results.
Thank you.
Okay. A couple of things. I've had the pleasure of sitting on this commission and learning quite a bit here in the last few months. And one of the things, and I see a lot of data that comes our way as far as Mr. Cobalt giving us figures on certain items. One of the things, I guess I look at, and I've had the fortunate to be part of the sheriff board and see a lot of the what they call hot spots, red zones, and things like that. I guess I would like to see, what we can do, or inviting public and awareness on what we seem to have the same spots over and over. And we look at those spots and the figures go up and down and adjust and here and there, but we still have the same issues in the same areas. I'm open to any type of suggestion of what we can do. Obviously, when we start looking at, we need more law enforcement, and as everyone just relates, that we could use a lot more law enforcement. Yet we need the funding to do so. And then we need industry up here to do that. So it's with the staggering things that we have to work with, and the city has to look at. What can we do as a commission as far as helping the community get involved more as far as those hot zones and those particular areas of what we should work on and how we should work at it? Because it seems to me those are things in the same areas. And are these individuals that are created, are they first time offense, second time, third, fourth, and I'm sure they're doing, like you've told me a million times, there's some of them are still out there doing the same thing, so, and now with Prop 47 coming into effect, the workload has got to be tremendous. I mean, I keep seeing this coming down the road here, so I'd like to see on those zones on what we are doing or what we can do to fix those areas. And what suggestions that we can do from our city, from our our commission here to see what their thoughts are and things like that. So I was posed a question today, and I was telling Commissioner that, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the number one areas of crime in the city, and correct me, I could be wrong on this, Mr. Bozigan or Mr. Cottle too, or Mr. Dorico, is that one of the most areas of crime, we used to think that it was Walmarts and some of this and that and everything else, and somebody mentioned the hospital is the first one that reports the crime. You know, I don't know if that's, I was totally shocked on that.
No, but because remember, they're mandatory reporting. So
Right.
if someone shows up with injuries, and it's determined based on their statements that a potential crime has occurred, then the hospital makes the call.
Yeah.
And that's why you see that on the call list, 1600 West Avenue J typically.
Right.
Because that is going to be a point of contact for those victims with law enforcement.
So I thought somebody was portraying a trick question to me, and I'm sitting there going, there's red zones here, and we have this, and with all the information, and when somebody mentions that, I was telling Angela, and I'm going, that's amazing, but now it's understandable. Those are type of things that should be addressed, I think, too, so.
You'll see this, the sheriff's station is like number 2. But
Yeah.
So I had a couple things also, and you know, community policing has been knocked around since the 80s, but it really goes back, if you think about it, back to Robert Peel in the 1870s when he revamped the whole London Police Department. So his whole idea was to get the people out there. And I was talking to my deputies about this probation today, and throughout the week asking them same kind of questions. What would you like to see? What do you remember of community cops when you were there? He goes, the ones that rolled their window down and said hi. You know, the ones that knew us by name, the ones that, you know, and we're not the bad kids, but the term community policing, again, it has moved a lot. It's kind of lost favor in the last, I don't know, 5 to 7 years. I don't see it used as much. But one of the other parts, and this is what Mr. Davis was talking about, was getting what we do out in the news. And I did find one little thing here. It was part of the COPS challenge, and the COPS are the Community Orientation Policing Service. And it says, as a profession, we do not invest as much as we should in working with the media, nor have we orchestrated a way to market community policing. When it gets covered, it's pretty much by accident. And I see that because I'm looking in the newspaper, and what do I see? I see a great article about the sheriffs that helped the elderly gentleman. He was in his motorized scooter, and he got lost on his way back from the doctors, and they helped him out. Or that the sheriffs, in a letter to editor, sheriffs are watching the skateboarders and saying, wish I could do that. But we're not really marketing towards there or getting everybody hears about the Ferguson, or everybody hears about the negative stuff that any cop does, but we want to be able to promote and market actually what our cops are doing that's positive. So that was one of the areas I would like to look at. The other one was, and maybe you guys can give me an update on this. I know a few months ago, the Lancaster Station took part in the body camera pilot program. Is there any outcome for that, or is there?
Yeah, that's a term study for the Sheriff's Department. So it's an experimental project here in our area. Lancaster Station was one of the first as a test project. That's being evaluated through the Sheriff's Department, not through the city. So the Sheriff's Department at some point on that collection of data, and it's more in line and impacting with their complaint process, okay, and the actions, and some litigation management. And that's really kind of the basis behind it, based on the number of unfounded complaints or unsubstantiated complaints and issues through litigation. So that statistical information will come from the Sheriff's Department. It's certainly something Mike and I can talk about when we can expect an update on that it's actually one of the assistant sheriff's programs. So we can definitely ask and see what kind of data we can extract from that.
If I could just add to, Commissioner, to one of the things that always amazed me too, Mr. Dorico and Mike, is that the type of territory is covered in this area up here by our law enforcement, CHP, and it's staggering when you look at the area that we have to cover, you know, and being involved with the sheriff's. It's just amazing the area of square miles that we cover as far as with the staff that we have, and you know, so that's something that should be brought out too, and let people know that what we're trying to do with the amount of people that we have, plus fix the problems, it's a tough chore. It's a tough chore, and I commend you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm just going to speak on behalf of Captain Nelson. Unfortunately, he's not able to be here, as well as the Operations Lieutenant, Lieutenant Randy Harris. Those are good points, sir, that you brought up as far as the amount of coverage that we cover for Lancaster Sheriff Station. It's over 700 square miles. In regards to the question regarding the body cameras, just like Mr. DeRico alluded to, it's been something that's done internally with the Sheriff's Department. It's just not just Lancaster Station. We're one of 2 other stations that are going with this pilot program. In fact, you probably even saw an article of it on Dateline about a month ago regarding Lancaster Station being involved with it. And, of course, it being new, there's technology challenges as well as successes with it. So it's still being studied and the data is still being collected, so we can't give you a full report exactly what it is. But I know it has been beneficial from my standpoint as far as complaints being unfounded or just drop in a number of complaints. So the deputies themselves, I can speak on behalf of the field deputies, we're open to that program.
And that's where I'm going with it. I see the cameras in the facilities reduce the numbers of false complaints and really vindicate the deputies probably 98% of the times when there is a complaint, showing that, no, that didn't happen. We have it on video. So I think they should be fully for it. And I would like to see a camera on every deputy and every car. Same thing with the CHP cars or the sheriff cars, or, like you say, litigation reduction is a major factor in that as well.
Other comments, thoughts? Anyone?
Just thinking on the issue of how we could better communicate the data that we see month to month to the community. I thought the fireside chat that the Planning Commission had, the city planner, I'm sorry, had was a very good idea. As a more informal setting, people got a chance to Q&A, and when we're dealing with things like this ordinance, for instance, I think it would be beneficial if we could break down the rationale and the information, the data behind the rationale, to bite-sized chunks that people can easily understand and easily process to understand the genesis of such an ordinance. I think periodically having things like that may be a benefit.
Okay.
Just on that note, Commissioner Carter, the crime data that Jim has and that crime mapping program that is available through the city's public safety website, and that's probably something we need to promote more out there for people can actually break it down to their immediate area and then work out from that, circle out from there to see what's actually occurring around them. We have some plans, and I'm just going to use some of my time on this subject right here because I'll have nothing to say at the end of this thing. Some of the things we're discussing in public safety is how to better promote and market. The city recently hired an individual just for the marketing part of things here at the city. She's already come forward with some great ideas on how to get our message out there as far as neighborhood watch, business watch, things that we're doing in the city. So that falls right in line with what you're saying, right, to present some of those things, and as well as some other comments made here by the rest of the commissioners as sending that message, changing that perception like we talked about the last meeting. I think the most significant thing I can say for Mike's behalf and the law enforcement here is the self-initiated activity statistic alone by our deputies is significant because it's over 40% more than any other comparable station in the county. So that tells you the job that the deputies are doing. Part of that is they take ownership of our area. A lot of them, the majority of them live in our area. Their families are here. There's a vested interest there. But that's something that has changed from several years ago prior to Pat's command as the captain, where we had a lot of unallocated time. That's not the case now, okay? It's all this other legislative issues and things that are working against some of the things that we've been working a direction for that proactive model. But we'll adapt, and we'll overcome it, and that's the attitude we have here. But the marketing to our community and getting back to Commissioner Smith's comment about community-based policing, I absolutely believe in that model. We've seen it work numerous times. It's making our law enforcement personnel, but the bigger side of it, our business community, our residential community, and them also participating and buying into that as well. So that's a strategy we're working on right now, currently. So we'll be bringing back some information to you as the commission on some ideas that we are working with that marketing specialist here at the city, that we're going to get that message out.
And, Lee, maybe an appropriate next step may also be, as we summarize what commissioners have said at this point in time, it sounds like there's some themes that run throughout what you're doing also, and maybe we can take a look at more clearly defining what does that mean and where may that go. One of the thoughts that I've thought of as well is, as we're looking at these things, what impact can we make as a commission to support the direction of what we're trying to get done here collectively or through the city council, and maybe from a legislative standpoint as well? Are there things that we can do to communicate with others that might bring resources to this area? I'm not sure, but as we pull it all together and clearly define and delineate where we're going, there may be some other things that pop up that allows us, just nearly by the structure that we are in, to bring resources forward.
Our standpoint, we've been writing down your comments. Okay, we can summarize that and send that out to you. Okay, and then any additional things you'd like to add to that, or correct if we made a mistake, or correct us. And I'm not a very sensitive guy, so be very direct. Okay, and we'll get that managed for you, and so we can have those discussions and things you'd like to see. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to commission staff presentations, updates, reports, and we'll start with our monthly crime stats. Mr. Cobalt.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioner Vieira. This particular measurement period runs from February 1st to 28th, 2015. These are the listing of our violent crimes, property crimes, and Part 1 crime totals for the 4 weeks that are included in the measurement period. One thing that's really nice about this is you can see that the numbers are going down as far as weekly crime frequencies go. You can also see the arrest data up there for both the violent crimes, property crimes, and total arrests. And you can also see the number of police reports issued by week. Excuse me. This is the weekly average and median for this report, and compared to last reporting period, you can see some really interesting movement there. Our weekly average dropped to 68.25 per week. For the median, it dropped to 68. That's as opposed to our last reporting period, which was 78.25, and the median was just slightly over 80 per week. We take a look at these data. We can see that our frequency dropped in February. Bear in mind, February had 28 days, didn't have 31 days, so that's going to show a numeric value that's going to be smaller. The encouraging thing that's here is if you look back over the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 previous monthly presentations here, we saw a fairly strong uptick in crime in the current year for each one of those months. You can see that the uptick in February was only 1%, which is good information for us. Our crime rate from March of 14 through February of 15 is 290.53 per 10,000 people. That's just slightly above our ending crime rate for 2014. We take a look at the most active reporting districts. 1126, 1135, 1137 all led the way with 33 and 28 respectively. 1121 had 27, 1132 had 25, and 1127 had 23. Going back to that hotspot issue that you were talking about, Commissioner Little, the thing that we see again is we still have those 4 primary areas. Couple of things with regard to hotspots that is presented in some of the literature. In fact, I'm reading an article right now in front of me that suggests that perhaps crime should be viewed in the same way that pollution is viewed, and certain locations emit more crime than other locations do. And the line of thought on that is the people who are as you'll see in our business report, crime doesn't occur the same way across the city. So it's not rational, if you will, to assume that one response to that different types of crimes all across the city are going to give you the solution that you want. You have to look at it basically from a space location and what are the factors that are involved in those space. And the primary responsibility for a space are the property owners and the property managers. So it would be a good assumption that if you hold the property managers and the owners responsible for what happens on their property, then there would be some result in that. In fact, the evidence, even in this report, is pretty strong with regard to that. We take a look at residential burglaries. We can see 1137 had 10, 1121 and 33 had 5, 1127 and 35 had 4, and 1126 had 3. Larcenies involving vehicles, this was a fairly low frequency during this month. 1121 had 5. We had 3 reporting districts that had 4, and we had 4 reporting districts that had 3. When we take a look at our weekly trends going back to March 2nd of 2014 running through the February 28th of 2015, we can see for the crimes trending up, rape, we had a week week 4 of this year that we had 3 reported rapes within the period of 1 week, so that spiked us up a little bit. Generally, that's a low frequency crime for us. We're about 1.05 per week on average. So when we have 3, you can see the impact of it there on the trend. Robbery, excuse me, is still showing an upward tick. We did have a week back in that very same week, week 4, we had 12 reported robberies. That's a significant uptick from the 5.9 that we average per week. Then when you can see the drop off after that week 4, things started to settle down just a little bit more. Burglary is also showing an upward trend, although since week 4 of 2015, you can see that it's kind of dropped off since then. And grand theft auto is also has an uptick. That is more related to a few weeks at the end of 2014 as opposed to 2015. Homicide still remains trending flat for us, which is good news. Assault is showing a really distinct downward trend there, and of course, that's positive for us because that shows that the violence in our community still remains at a low rate. We struggle with things like larceny and burglary and things like that, but when it comes to particularly gang-related problems, violence and stuff like that, we're still a really safe place. Take a look at larceny too. Larceny is showing a downward trend at all. We've had 1 week in the past 10 weeks or so that broke slightly over the weekly median for us, which is good news. Arson, again, a very low frequency crime for us, 1.06 per week on average. You can see that we've got a strong downward trend there. This is how crime laid out across the city for the measurement period. When we talk about repeat calls, this is where we get to Commissioner Little's the hospital being an active place. The hospital is normally our most active place as far as calls for service go. Normally, when a crime is, when the Sheriff's Department responds and they find they have a crime there, they'll put in the location of where the crime actually occurred rather than the hospital. But for calls for service, they do lead the way. And we don't really have any new additions to the list during this reporting period, which is also good news for space management. and this is the map of how it lays out across the city. This is our forecast for March of 2015. We're forecasting about 355 Part 1 crimes. We take a look at the February forecast. We forecasted 325. We had an actual of about 310, which gave us a 95% accuracy rate. And that's about all I've got.
Can I make a comment on that too? As it concerns robbery, we've been taking a very good close look at that. And that isn't typically our armed robbery situations. That's more of a strong arm component. A lot of that has to do with electronic device thefts taken by force. But this is something that I'm going to pay close attention to as it relates to what we've talked about with the raising of dollar amounts as it relates to petty theft and Prop 47. But, what individuals need to understand, if they use any force whatsoever as it relates to that theft, now we have robbery. We don't have petty theft, regardless of the amount. It doesn't matter if it's $1, okay? If you take anything from anybody or any location by force, regardless of the value, that is a felony. Okay, so that's a trend we're going to really look at as it relates to this, because as the especially the larger retail stores step up their loss prevention programs, because that's a discussion going on. I have an ongoing dialogue right now with Walmart nationally as they're putting things in place in California, specifically as it relates to this issue. Okay, and as those individuals are approached and potentially attempted to be detained by their loss prevention staff, if they use any force to remove themselves from that, we have a whole different ball game now. Okay, so that's going to be some community awareness things we're going to be talking about out there for anyone that might potentially think this is a good plan for them for a living to go out and steal for $950 or less.
And a question just to that point. Can you couch force? Is it physical? Is it verbal?
It's not verbal. Not as far as the elements of this particular section. Okay, it's by force. Fear is articulated, but that would be simulated. Okay, so if someone simulated a weapon, now that would constitute the fear aspect of it. Okay, but it would have to be some kind of articulation of that fear that's validated based on the elements of the crime. Okay.
But not the terrorist threats? I mean, is that a whole different?
That's a whole different ball game. Okay. And that one's been mitigated beyond belief based on really somewhat non-appropriate use of that section under 422. That's been going on for some time now.
Right.
Thank you.
Jim, if I could go back just real quickly with regards to, you were talking about the hot zones and the pollution, and you made reference to the landlords, and if I understood you correctly, was your comment relative to that's where maybe some of the most effective ways with dealing with that may be?
Well, one of the things we're trying to do right now in the business improvement groups is to get the property managers, and it's kind of like it's going one, and then we pick up another one, and then we pick up another one, because there are property managers and property owners of our commercial areas all across the city. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the property managers, if we know, it's not a good and bad thing. We know from risk terrain analysis of our city, there are certain variables that are present in these areas that are hotspots. And those areas, not just in Lancaster, but all across the country, have been statistically shown to give you a high frequency of crime, or a higher frequency than other areas. So what we have to do is we have to increase place management in those spaces. That could include things like, the sheriff's department does not have the time or ability to do private security duties for locations that have a higher exposure to these things. For example, on the east side of town, in our East Side Business Improvement Group, there's virtually no outside security of any of the spots over there. There's plenty of loss prevention inside, but nobody's tending to the outside. On the west side and down at 10th and K where they're doing it, they're having great results. We're seeing double-digit reductions in crime. You get over on the east side, it's different. But then crime is occurring also in a little different way on the west side that I'll go into during the business and group versus the east side. The east side, the folks that or the folks are targeting the businesses themselves. Mm-hmm. On the west side, it's a little more they're targeting other customers because loss prevention doesn't get involved with if I steal something from you. They only get involved if I steal something from the business.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions, comments? No? All right, we will move on with arrest stats with LA County Sheriff's Department. Deputy Ruiz.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission, all present. Statistics for the month of February are as follows for our burglary suppression team. They did 9 felony arrests while executing 6 search warrants. 23 other individuals were arrested on the streets with warrants. 1 firearm was recovered, and over $97,000 worth of stolen property was recovered solely in the short month of February. They did a very good job. Our Lancaster suppression team also had 31 felony arrests with 6 misdemeanors. No firearms were recovered. That photo is actually an outdated photo from the previous month. I didn't have any photos to put in this month. Just want to make sure that's not misleading. Parolees that were arrested were 6 out of that 31 felonies, as well as over $6,700 of narcotics was seized, taken off our streets in the city of Lancaster. And our narcotics team was also pretty busy with 3 felony arrests. They had 7 search warrants that were taken out of that. 112 grams of methamphetamine as well as 22 grams of marijuana was seized, and they also didn't have any firearms, and that's also an outdated photo. They didn't arrest a pirate. That musket was from a previous month. We had a very busy community-orientated month in the month of February, and I'll highlight those items, as well as we're going to have a very busy month in the month of March. That picture that you see right there was our memorial, our internal Lancaster Station memorial, to recognize the sacrifices of 2 deputy sheriffs that were killed in the line of duty while responding Code 3 in an emergency at the intersection of 30th Street West and Avenue K. On March 26, 1978, they were killed in a traffic collision while responding to a Code 3 emergency. Deputy Gregory Lowe was killed and pronounced at the scene, and a few days later, his partner was Reserve Deputy Charles Plumé, was also killed as a result of his injuries from that traffic collision. So over the past several years, we've had a memorial where we stand guard at that intersection near Bethel, right across the street from Antelope Valley College in that desert lot there on the very southwest corner of the intersection, from 6 o'clock in the morning, rain or shine, till 6 p.m., so sunrise to sunset. And we stand guard in their honor. They still have family members that appreciate that. They still come on out. That picture is of students, grade school students from Bethel Middle School that come out there and show their appreciation. And we really appreciate the efforts on the city also, who have helped us with recognizing their efforts by putting a memorial sign out there, which is going to be permanently put at the memorial intersection of 30th Street West and Avenue K. And that's a picture of that sign that's presently put there, and you're more than welcome to go see it. The City of Lancaster, or Lancaster Station, also participated in the Lancaster Corporate Challenge. We've already done the bowling event, and this was a picture of our first place team. I like to note that. In our 5K event. I'm not sure how many teams. I think we have about 12. Yeah, 12 teams. I wasn't going to say 2. Yeah. So we took first place overall in the point standings for that specific event. Overall point standings are still being accumulated for other events. We also have a softball team that's participating in this ongoing tournament, which will continue on through April, and several other events that will continue, as you know, through the month of June. And we're very happy to be able to participate in that. To highlight also, separate from those photos, we have deputies that are participating in what's called the MAC Youth Pure program. It's a very, very new program. We started at Cole Middle School And MAC stands for Making Appropriate Choices. In combined efforts with Dr. Miguel Coronado as well as Dr. Mark Marshall, they have a new peer support program that just kicked off on February 17th, where we're going to hit middle school students with making appropriate choices and deviate. It's like a peer support to keep middle-aged students from using drugs, tobacco, alcohol, and making appropriate choices for their health, their well-being, and their education. And we're happy to be a part of that program. There are several meetings that are happening on the school campuses to promote that in middle schools right now. So look for more, bigger and better things to come from that. We also had deputies that participated in the Dr. Seuss National Read Day earlier this month at several schools, specifically Sunnydale Elementary. Upcoming events that we do have coming is on March 27th. We're happy to promote our Antelope Valley Sheriff's Boosters are going to have a casino night at the University of Antelope Valley, and that's going to help raise money towards our new command post, which we hope to have, for many responses, whether it's a lost child, major traffic collision, DUI checkpoints, many other things that a command post like that would be used. We currently have one, but it's probably spending more time in the shop now than it's actually being used because of the fact that it's just aging and it needs to be updated. The Sheriff's Boosters have been very helpful to the Sheriff's Department and our Lancaster Station specifically for giving us items that normally aren't in our budget, safety items and tactical gear for the safety of the deputies and the safety of the community. And a lot of many other promotions come from that fundraising. So we're happy to promote anybody who'd like to try and get tickets. They can contact me directly, Deputy Miguel Ruiz, mtruiz@lasd.org, or there's many other signs that are posted all over Sierra Highway, and many other businesses have flyers on there promoting the casino night on March 27th. And then also another event that we have is our annual Baker to Vegas event, which is also going to be at the end of this month, the 28th and 29th. Happy to say that our Lancaster Station team is defending champions in the invitational station category, and I know without a doubt that we will come back as champions again. We're going to be defending our championship. Other than that, that's all I have to report, unless you have any other questions. Thank you very much.
And we'll continue on from the California Highway Patrol update.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
The stats I'm about to give you, it's a year-end, or they're year-to-date stats compared with the 3-year average, the percentages are, and it's for the entire Antelope Valley area. DUI arrests, I wanted to kick off with that. They are actually down 27% compared to that 3-year average. However, the DUI traffic collisions are actually also down 12.5%. So what I'm hoping is that our ongoing education efforts and different things that we are doing out in the community on a regular basis are helping to actually drive the number of impaired drivers down in our area. Arrests overall are down 18%, but I'd like to point out also that we are down a few different bodies as far as injuries and ongoing personnel shortages. So our overall patrol hours that we've spent so far this year compared to the 3-year average is down 12% as well. So we are working at a little bit of a handicap here. Total TCs or traffic collisions are actually up about 9% over the 3-year average. And unfortunately this year we've had 6 fatal collisions in the Antelope Valley area as compared with 4 is the 3-year average. So we are up, and we're hoping that doesn't continue. But those are all the statistics I have. If anyone has any questions.
Just a question off note. I know a while back there had been seemed like a recruiting effort on the part of CHP up and down the state. Are we, the community, going to be a recipient of any growth with regards to new
Yes,
folks
we are.
on board?
We're actually getting 2 new cadets. They actually reported yesterday.
Good.
So that should help us. And then, we do have ongoing recruitment efforts going on. So
Great.
for our area, 2 is actually a significant number.
Good. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next was district attorney update. I don't see our district attorney representative, nothing today. Okay. Then we're going to move on to item 5. Mr. Drico, was there anything further?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Oh.
Thanks, Lee. The Business Improvement Group report covers February 2015. These are the data for the last 24 months with regard to 10th Street West and Avenue K. This is one of the things that I was talking about. They've been pretty proactive down there with exterior private security, and you can see when we compare the present year to the previous year, we're down 13%. February 2015, we had our, knock on wood, our first reported theft from auto going back to November of last year, so it's been pretty effective. 7 of the crimes were shoplifts. 2 of them were robberies related to shoplifts. That's where that robbery thing comes into place. The suspect exits the store and loss prevention approaches them, and then they use some kind of force against loss prevention. All of a sudden you've got a robbery. There was 1 nighttime burglary and 2 other thefts that were in that area. We take a look at Valley Central Way. This is one of the areas I was talking about that we're seeing a little bit of a shift in some MO activity from the subjects. First, though, when we take a look at the 24 months and we present, we compare the present year to the previous year, you can see up there that we're down 36% on Valley Central Way with regard to crime. Again, they've done a very good job over there of getting exterior security out during some of the prime times. During February, there was 1 reported theft from auto. Purse snatches and theft of customer phones, tablets, and laptop computers accounted for 5 of the crimes. So essentially what you're seeing there is a grand total of 6 crimes really victimized the customer as opposed to the establishment. We're seeing that a little bit more, particularly over on the west side of town, where perpetrators will go in and they'll look for people not paying attention to their purses or not paying attention to other objects in their cart. Maybe once they've got out to the parking lot and things like that and they're loading stuff in their car. Again, loss prevention doesn't go after those thefts. So these are things that we're seeing more and more and more on the west side of town. When we take a look at Lancaster Boulevard, we look at the last 24 months and compare year to year, we're up 6% there. In February on the boulevard, there were 2 non-residence burglaries, 5 thefts, and 1 grand theft auto, and 1 aggravated assault. You look at East Avenue J, again, looking at the 24 months, this is where the highest spike up is. It's up 10% over there. Again, very few of the properties over there for the commercial establishments have any outside security whatsoever, and for the ones that do, we might consider them less than effective because they engage in observe and report as opposed to perhaps getting involved in representing the owner of the property. 7 of those crimes were shoplift, or 8 of the 13 Part 1 crimes that were over there, or 62% were at Walmart. 7 of those crimes were shoplifts, and 1 was a grand theft auto. 4 of the remaining crimes were thefts, and the final crime was a strong-armed robbery at the intersection of 20th East and Avenue J. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Public business from the floor, non-agendized items. We do have 1 speaker card, Mr. David Paul. And there will be a 3-minute. So 2.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. Pleasure to be here as always. I was sitting there and I'm thinking about a couple of things about jobs and theft. And I thought about my father. My father wasn't a nice man. He abandoned me when I was 5 years old and my entire family. But I did know him through my life. And he had the best job in the world. He was a tool and die maker at Fisher Body. And he has seniority, and he would get furloughed with complete pay for 6 months at a time and go to Canada to fish. And that was his job. He also used to steal profusely every day from his company in his lunchbox and held in high esteem the other men who were actually able to steal part by part an entire engine from the factory. Now, I've been to Walmart too and talked to their loss prevention people, and a lot of the theft that goes on there is from employees internally in the store. So there's usually much, much more to it than that. And Deputy Ruiz, I was interested in hearing about the MAC program, because that's what it's about, making appropriate choices, and you have to get them young. I've been involved in some form of behavior modification for over 40 years, teaching people how to better live their lives. And I just want to say for the record, I've been knocking on the door to be part of the working group, and as of yet, I haven't been welcomed. So if we need complete cooperation and participation, I would like them to consider letting me be involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any closing comments from commissioners? No? Just again, like to welcome the Law and Government Academy. Thanks for being here. I'll provide any questions that you might have as you were able to observe democracy in action today. Now's an opportunity. And if not, that's okay. Okay, well.
Actually, we want to make a comment.
Sure.
We'd like to.
Come again. We can't hear you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. We would like to thank the two mentors that we have, Mr. Cobalt and Ms. Mercer. We really appreciate their mentoring our students at Highland. And if anyone else is interested, please let us know.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. I didn't know Mr. Cobalt was a part of that. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Okay, that will be the business of today. We stand adjourned. The next meeting is on the 8th of April at 10 a.m. Thank you.